Let me spell out what IPBES is. That's the Intergovernmental Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. So if one asks what is it like, I would say it looks very much like IPCC style, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, but in this case for biodiversity and ecosystem services. So the whole idea here is to provide on a periodic basis information on how we are doing in terms of biodiversity, much broader ecosystem services. What do I mean by ecosystem services? Essential things like food production, water regulation, very critical services for human well-being, and in fact the survival. Things like climate regulation, so climate change is part of that process, although we will work together with IPCC on that linkage. So in a way, to provide a platform for scientists working on biodiversity and ecosystem services, to bring them together periodically to look at the state of the world's, how are we doing on biodiversity and ecosystem services. Because when the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment finished its assessment 5 years ago, we have found that 60% of ecosystem services are in decline, and we have basically got rid of biodiversity at a rate that has never been witnessed in history before. The decision was to have a plenary with 2 sessions. So the first session will be in October, and the idea here is to start looking at how will it look like. What is the structure? What is the governance? What are the secretariat? Where is it going to be located? As well as the rules and procedures of this platform. How is it going to be governed? So it's really important. It's important for, in a way, I see IPBES also as a social contract between science, the scientific community, and society. It's something that the science community would provide to society in terms of biodiversity and ecosystem services. So it's important at this meeting to sort of see how the scientists will play, not just in a passive role of bringing in the science, but also in terms of working together with policymakers on the type of, the kind of information that is needed, the uncertainties that are concerned. And for once, if you look at biodiversity and ecosystem services, it's very fragmented. You got the Convention on Biodiversity, which is the flagship for biodiversity. Then you have the Convention on Desertification, which is also very important for biodiversity. Then you got the wetlands, Ramsar. So you have about, surprisingly, 200 to 300 agreements, and they all have their own little science initiatives. This brings it all together, common science platform, brings all the scientists working across all these little initiatives, and to provide that kind of unified knowledge.